Finley.
Welcome to Bare Bones. With your host, Danny Meehan and Dr. Mason West.
Good evening, Bears fans. I am Mason West, and as usually, joined by Danny Meehan. Danny, how you doing?
Hey, Mason. Good afternoon. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Not too bad. It's been a little bit since we've hopped on here, so I'm probably gonna be a little rusty. I had a vacay and a bunch of stuff, so it's been a hot minute since we've done a podcast.
Yeah, you were in Disney?
I was in Tampa.
Tampa. I knew you were down in Florida.
Tampa Bay Beer Week.
Good.
It's always a good time.
Man.
2 beer fests Saturday, Sunday, then a bunch of events that happened during the week. We left Wednesday, but then they continued to
have the
Saturday.
finest Pilsner available to you.
God, get that out of my face. I am, though. I'm doing another dry month after basically drinking way too much for 4 days straight. So I'm on week and a half of that right now.
I don't blame you. Not one bit.
Well, in Bears world, kind of fun. 20-ish minutes ago, it was announced, right, that Olamide Zacchaeus, I always mess up his first name.
Olamide Zacchaeus.
Thank you. Signing with the Bears, 1-year deal, which is surprising. I know you and I talked about that a little bit before we hopped on, but 45 catches and 506 yards for the Commanders last year. Speedy wide receiver, spends time both outside and in the slot. He actually finished 13th among NFL receivers with 6.4 yards after per catch per reception. Pretty solid, and I know you're a big fan of him.
Mm-hmm. Always have been. But anyone who's followed my draft work, and I know you and I talk enough, I have two types of receiver. Either you're a big former basketball player who's going to go and jump up and dunk on someone, or you're 5'0" and very, 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 very fast. There's really no in between for what I like.
At least you're consistent, but consistently extreme.
My receiver likes and I think here comes the disclaimer of you can recognize talent and also know you have types of what you like.
Oh, absolutely.
Nothing precludes me from saying, "Oh, Rome Odunze is really good." Doesn't mean I didn't like watching Keon Coleman more than him.
I'm saying I'm gonna talk about a certain running back that fits that mold, where I know there might be better ones, but I just love him. It doesn't matter. Also, Bears re-signed Steven Carlson. For anyone that cares.
Right? Yeah.
But what we are going to get to do, so we were going to have Nick Whalen join us today, but so if you're coming here for Nick, you're not getting him. He had something else he had to do, unfortunately, got scheduling mixed up, but we will have him on at some point in the future. But that gives us a little bit of space here, since we don't have 3 people talking about mock drafts, to give up some ideas on Bears free agency so far. So, Danny, what are your thoughts on what the Bears did in the first couple days of free agency?
I think it was very well executed. I think the nagging voice in the back of my head, it's great that you got, and traded for, Joe Tooney and Jonah Jackson, and you signed Drew Dahlman, and you did all these things where you addressed the trenches. But the nagging voice in my head is you shouldn't have been having to address it in droves this way. If you had just invested the way you properly should to build your team inside out versus outside in, the way football teams typically are constructed. So good, but also kind of infuriating that this is the route you had to, the way in which you had to go and do this. But I'm not going to complain about the results. Sometimes the process can suck, but the result will be largely good in the end.
And I get it. I hear you on that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's tough to be too upset for me just because the tube's out of the toothpaste kind of thing already. So you can't
Right.
shove
Oh
it
no, I
back
get
in.
you. No, I'm not like upset about it. It was more just like
No, I get it. You're raging. You're
that
super upset.
that realization of just why is it this? Why is this having to happen in this way?
And I know this is
Like,
just maybe a me thing, and I think we slightly differ on this.
Mhm.
I say that Poles is a collaborator to a fault. I think that, for example, you look at the picks
that
two
it's
in a row
totally possible.
of Dexter and then the two defensive linemen in a row, right? You look at the Larry Ogunjobi attempted signing, things like that.
Sure.
I almost feel like he's like oh, what do you want, Eberflus kind of thing at the time. Again, to a fault, and maybe that shifted away from the line, and then who knows? The line assessment, like how much of it was just terrible, and how much of the new line assessment is Ben Johnson. We're never going to know the full answer unless there's until the 30 for 30 comes out in about 10 years. But but about this current crop of signings,
The
that I like them all, to be honest, for variety of reasons. I know some people love the Deo signing just because they're like, we could have had Josh Sweat. Look at the contract he got. But Josh Sweat doesn't fit the physical profile that Dennis Allen wants and needs. So.
That's the other part. Like I can't, the Dio signing and people like, why wouldn't you just keep like
DeMarcus Walker would have been a cheaper version of
DeMarcus
him.
Walker? Like DeMarcus Walker's 32 or will be 32 years old, I believe.
Right.
There's no upside left. Yes, they were the same last year. 2 years ago, also, Dio had 12 sacks. Now I get the pressure to sack rating and whatever might have been a fluke year. Look at what he wants. These enormous, long-armed, heavy-bodied, heavy-handed pocket pushers.
Mhm.
It's why when we did our mock-off season 3 weeks ago, like why I was like, what do we think about this? Because this is the guy I just keep coming back to. Like,
And
then
you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it.
Like, and then you factor in like not just the Dennis Allen part of this. Who drafted Dio? The Colts.
Mm-hmm.
Who did Ryan Poles learn under for years in Kansas City?
Yeah,
Chris Ballard, Chris Ballard, who is the GM of the Colts. If Ballard likes someone, the odds of Ryan Poles probably liking someone is pretty high. Just food for thought, yes.
No, I mean, I totally agree with that. I mean, if it's the Bears definitely have done the whole RAS thing, right? Like the leaning towards guys who have fit that profile more than other teams, definitely less than the Colts. I mean, Colts are basically like who's closest to 10 and like we'll just take them. But Ryan Poles and the Bears have definitely done that. You mentioned, like you said, the big long pocket pusher, the age, because he's, I believe, only 25 years old. He's also been ascending for the most part. And also that Colts defense was horrendous last year. Yes, the Bears ended up losing to them, but that defense sucked. And ultimately, there's only so many sacks that he's going to get when the rest of the line just isn't all that good. When the rest of the secondary it's a problem. If you listen to some of the beat writers that talk about the Colts, they were talking about quarterbacks just got the ball out too fast. Like pressure couldn't get there because the secondary couldn't defend. So I'm willing to see what happens there. And then you have Grady Jarrett. That's another bit of a divisive one. He signed a 3-year, $43.5 million contract. Some people really love it. Some people hate it, probably because of his age and because he's going to be 2 years removed from an ACL tear. I think for also listening to him in the presser, I think you can see why the Bears brought him in. Part of it is that locker room culture guy. And I also think just from a medical standpoint, he's going to be better than he was last year because he's 2 years removed from the ACL. And really, you're not back to your 100% until 2 years post-op.
Yes, I was going to say, aren't you usually 100% like 18 to 24 months post-op?
Yeah, you're more like 80, 75% after 1 year.
Yeah. Which is why we need to stop citing Adrian Peterson being a freak of nature.
Yeah, he ruined that for just everybody, just because like everyone's like everyone should be AP, and it's like no, you shouldn't.
No, AP is Wolverine. So,
but yeah. So overall, I mean, yes. And one more little tip. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say with Grady Jarrett, I personally loved it. I'm also willing enough to admit I'm remembering the guy who was probably competing for first team All-Pro honors if he wasn't playing at the same time as Aaron Donald.
Yeah, Donald just stole all the glory.
Like, this guy was absolutely wrecking shop for segments of games or whole games or stretches of weeks. He was really good. Is he that same player anymore, even with him probably being 100% after his ACL? No, age catches everybody. But I have a hard time not being excited about it just because, A, you listen to him at his presser. That's clearly a leader of your defensive line, if not the whole defensive side of the locker room. And you put him on a rotation where he's not being asked to play 75, 80% of the snaps, and you can cut him down to 60% and rotate him with Gervon and Billings. And, I think they're going to draft another defensive tackle. And all of a sudden you're going to be deep on the defensive line, which is what everyone's been calling for years. Like, just be the Eagles. Be just like every guy is some sort of formidable defensive lineman that is lining up against you.
And we'll ultimately see what happens here. You could really take it either way, where you could say, well, the Falcons don't necessarily make good moves, so like letting him go is not a sign of anything. But you can go the other way too. The Bears haven't necessarily been known to do good moves, so like that may not be a sign of anything. We'll see ultimately what happens, but I totally agree with you. Being able to reduce his snap count, make it really maximize the efficiency of those snaps, have that rotation going. We talked about the locker room stuff, and then today, Drew Dahlman talked, and pretty much most of the presser, he was pretty stone cold face. The one time he actually lit up when he was talked about Grady Jarrett and the battles that they had in practice and how they made each other better, iron sharpens iron, all that jazz. And so I think all that matters, and that's one of the reasons I am excited to see ultimately what Grady Jarrett does. Now it's a 3-year deal, but really it's a 2-year deal, and so if you even if you got 1.5 solid years of him, that's a good move.
And even so, look at every deal they signed. They're all like 3-year deals masquerading as, or 2-year deals masquerading as 3-year deals. Dahlman's is like when you can get out of it for like 2 years. Same with Dio.
Yep.
And I'm willing to bet, if I had to put money on it, it's because guys like Dahlman and Dio specifically, it's because they want the third contract. They can capitalize again with another cap spike, where if you play well enough, you're going to get a bigger number and a larger percentage of the cap.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, I want to say, because I've seen a lot of it with like all the talk of like how much some of these offensive guards are getting and this, that, the other. Guys, this is a normalization of players taking up more of the same percentage of cap with the cap raising.
Yeah, you got to look at a percentage. You can't look at just the number.
Yeah, you can't look at the number. You got to look at the percentage of the cap that they're taking up. So when you're doing this, it's the same thing as like bench players in the NBA now, the 6th, 7th, 8th men, are making $20 to $23 million a year because that's what their going rate is. A middle-of-the-road offensive guard or defensive end is going to make $18 million a year now. That's just what they make.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's jarring to look at, but it's still the same percentage of the cap. The $16 million that Deo is making this year is akin to probably like $10 million 2 years ago. Is it more money? Yes, in the volume of it, but percentage of the cap wise, it's probably about the same.
Yeah, NFL inflation and us inflation are not the same thing.
Correct.
All right, we're going to do a quick break, and then we're going to dive into the mock drafts. All right, welcome back, and we are ready for our mock draft. Danny and I went through all the picks. Like we had this set up originally. Nick was supposed to be here. Boop. Unfortunately, he's not. Okay, so Danny, you're actually kicking us off because you chose to trade back. Talk about that.
Mm-hmm. It was basically the way when I ran my PFF simulator, it didn't fall the way I was hoping it would fall. And it was kind of like, I'm not one of those people like I'm not gonna like go through teams to try and trade. If it's an interested team, I'll make an offer. And if it's anything less than I think my baseline I usually go with is like if it falls under 95% interest, I won't make the offer.
Oh man,
because
you're stingy with that. I do 50.
No, because it's based on trade chart points in history. And I've realized, like, just through playing with it over the years, if you get it to like 65%, chances are the trades are going to go through. So I just make it so, like, make it almost like you have to make it somewhat reasonable. And I didn't like who was left on the board. I believe J&T was gone.
I assume like Campbell was gone.
Campbell was gone. Membu was gone. It was like all the guys that I was like, truth be told, I'm really not thrilled about the Campbell idea anyway. But
right,
like, it just didn't fall any sort of way. And I was like, all right, well, we're just going to trade back to whoever. I think it was the Cardinals who offered to move up.
So you traded back. You gave up to the pick 10 and a 5th round pick this year. You ended up getting the 16th pick from the Cardinals, their 2nd round pick at 47, and their 5th round pick at 153.
Yeah.
All right.
Just somewhat reasonable trade.
Yeah. So I've been saying fairly consistently and over the last couple of weeks on Twitter that I think it's going to be very hard to trade back. Part of the reason
it is going to be extremely hard because the draft sucks.
Yes, the draft sucks. You don't have the top quarterbacks. You don't have the top receivers. People keep talking about Ted McMillan. Like, I think he's good. He's not a trade up and get him.
And it's funny when you guys see my first pick because Ted not wanting to run is a big red flag.
Yep.
The player that I drafted for them in this hypothetical also choosing to not run, usually a big red flag.
And I'm trying to double check when was Drake London drafted?
When?
Yeah, what pick was he?
7? Was London 7?
I'm trying to double check here. Yeah, 8th overall pick. So Drake London was another guy who chose not to run because he just wasn't going to run fast. He went to 8. Not awful by any means, but not the Marvin Harrison Jr., not the Malik Neighbors, not not that quality of receiver in terms of people like seeking, like, because I think part of that was a bit of the speed issue. So anyway, totally agree. So I wanted to walk the walk and talk the talk, long story short. And so I stuck at 10, even though I would have liked to trade back. I did that in the first mock. I'm sure I'll do it again. But first pick here, I went with Armand Membu, who was sitting there. And I thought, so here we go. Follow me on this. Because I know there are a lot of people who are going to point to the line and say this pick could be used better elsewhere. I even specifically had someone on Twitter who I was talking with who said picking an O-lineman at all was burning the pick, whatever. I raise you Dan and Jalen Moore. Jalen Moore signed a 2-year, $30 million contract with the Kansas City Chiefs, including $7.4 million signing bonus, $21 million of that guaranteed, with an average of $15 million. Dan Moore signed a 4-year, $82 million contract with the Titans, $50 million guaranteed. That's $20.5 million per year. Chiefs had to pivot when Ronnie Stanley went back to the Ravens, so they settled on Jalen. Jalen looked okay at best and not a great 49ers offensive line. And the 49ers let him walk when they need offensive line help. I think that says something. Dan Moore became expendable, A, due to his play, and B, the Steelers had Broderick Jones and Troy Fontenot. And so is Braxton Jones your for sure left tackle of the future? With his injuries, I don't know that we can say yes. Also, do you want to pay him 15 to 20K plus inflation next year when you have to re-sign the guy? You add in that Membu is also potentially a Jonah Jackson insurance policy because he does have an injury history. And if that happens to peak up in his offensive line play, you're always going to have injuries somewhere. People are going to rage over this, saying the 10th overall pick needs to play week 1 and make an impact week 1. I don't agree with that. Plus, he could. I mean, I'm not convinced, like I said, Braxton's going to be ready for training camp. And if Membu looks good, maybe he even starts. Now, left tackle, some people have left tackle concerns with Membu. When Membu started at Missouri, they had an established left tackle. So the coaching staff didn't feel like they needed to uproot a guy when Membu got there, and Membu could play right tackle, so they put him there. He has the movement ability to play multiple positions and is athletic enough to make a change. Plus, pass rusher isn't always playing against your left tackle anymore, right? They're playing all over the line. So that's totally fine to have him at left tackle. Should be able to, if things work out perfect, to have, a full summer, decent chunk of fall to get prepared for his position of the future. If you're the Bears, you're hoping to not be picking in the top 10 anymore anytime soon. So striking now to get a left tackle option or just, a solid offensive line option, depending on how you look at him, to me, makes sense. And ultimately, you have to get away from the mentality that your first round pick needs to start immediately, especially if your roster has talent. The more talented your roster is, the less likely it's immediately a plug and play starter. So that's just the general thought process here. But just for Membu specifically, I'm going to try to make this short since I just went on that rant. 6'4", 332-pound prospect with 33.5-inch arms, had a RAS of 9.89, 4.91 40-yard dash, which is just ridiculous. His height isn't that of your typical tackle, and his arm length just crosses that threshold, but he's young and uber talented. Elite body control, has good pop when he gets his hands on you, pairs that with footwork and core strength to maintain his blocks, and athletic and agile to stay connected to the rushers around the arc. Negative, longer edges can give him some problems if he gets outreached. And I just think he doesn't necessarily sink his hips and knee bend super well, but I think so that causes him to lean at times. My comp for him is a more athletic Zach Tom.
Okay, I can see that. I think the issue with that is Tom was such a refined player coming out. If I were to quibble with you, Membu is my ideal outcome at the 10th pick because I don't think they're going to be able to trade off of it, as we kind of alluded to just before we got into this. His feet, his body, he's all over the place. He's just an athlete at this point, which is why the fact that, yes, I only understand that even like dating back to high school, I believe he's only played the right side. But I just think if you look at the measurables and the things that he can do just from a baseline of what he tested at, he's very rare. The only reason he wasn't a 10 was because he was slightly shorter.
Yeah.
On the RAS. Like he's 6'4", not 6'6". Like he's a little bit short. That's it. He's got long enough arms. He, I believe, had the 6th most bench press reps of any offensive lineman who went to the combine. And the other people that did, like you said, 33.5-inch arms, the other players that outbenched him all were 32 sub-inch armed players. Because for people who don't know, range of motion matters in terms of fatigue. When you have to go further, you're moving weight further. This is how physics works. So let's use that and chew on that a little bit. That being said, I don't think I could think of a better scenario in terms of you don't want to be picking inside the top half of the first round anymore, let alone the top 10. You need to swing hard. I don't care if you deem it him. That's why Gene T to me makes sense.
He does.
If that's the route you choose to go as the Bears. Like, is he on the level of a Bijan or anything like that? No, but he's still one of the. But is he still in the tier of blue chip prospects in this draft that only currently has 3, maybe 4 of them? Like my issue is, like, for instance, with Campbell, is that his likely best case outcome is Braden Smith. You don't draft anyone inside the top 10 hoping they become Braden Smith. You're hoping they become Tyron Smith. And I think it's such a hard needle to thread. Like, we did it the whole time with the kid from Northwestern who they moved into guard for Tennessee. Peter Skronsky, who's become a good player, but the transition from tackle to guard when you're not a natural guard isn't easy. It's a hard thing to do. The reason you see it so much in the middle rounds is because that's how these guys have to live. You taking a guy who's a tackle by trade and would have to rework everything he does as a tackle to become a guard. The guy's literally never plays with his hand in the dirt.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot that can worry me with him. It's why I actually would actively kind of root against him being picked by the Bears if that's what it came down to, because I don't want to deal with that problem. But Yeah, Armand Mambu for me. Love the pick. Doubtful that he's there.
Someone's gonna be there at 10.
Someone's got to be there at 10.
Oh, and also as a reminder for those listening, we cannot pick the same people. So, for example, in my first mock, I picked Genty, so I could not take him, even though he was sitting there available for this pick. I'm still not sure exactly what my number one heart-to-heart choice is, but if they left night one with Membu, I'm not upset. If you're one of those people that are pounding the table saying your first pick has to start right away, I don't think you're looking necessarily around the league enough, because you see a lot of good teams who are picking consistently in the, like, take the Chiefs, take the Eagles, all these people. A lot of times their person is not starting right away. It just is what it is. Like, it happens because they have good teams. All right, moving on. Now Danny is up after trading back to pick 16. He took Will Johnson, corner out of Michigan.
Okay, so I want to preface this by saying, would this be what I would want to see happen? No, especially because I'm someone who subscribes to, as I've termed it many times on the show, the planet theory. I believe in taking guys high who don't really exist because their outcome for ceiling is typically that is greater than someone like Johnson. That being said, Johnson is a terrific football player. And I think that there's something to be said for drafting a high floor. And I think the idea behind it that I had in my mind when I did it was I could move Tyreek and his stiff hips, stiff ankles, and inability to really turn, and I could potentially make him a safety replacement. Because that was something that we talked about for him in his pre-draft process, as it was anyway. I do think Tyreek has a place with Dennis Allen, with the style of player that Allen wants in the secondary, but I couldn't pass up the value of how good the football player was in Will Johnson versus just taking someone I didn't think was likely. It's a very boring pick. I worry that he's not running. I don't even know if it's been reported yet if he's going to run at Michigan's Pro Day.
I would bet he doesn't, to be honest.
Because I think he's going from guy who was like viewed as a blue chip. Because if you watch his film, he has blue chip film. He's awesome as a football player.
But he is clear quarterback.
But if you look at him and watch him play football and watch him run, he's slow for a corner. It's the same thing as the Cam Scadaboo love is out of control that I'm seeing right now. Where it's like, does anyone else see how slow he is? No? Okay, whatever. But that's my take, that if you were to hypothetically trade back, if I told you they ended up with Will Johnson, I don't think anyone would be mad. I just don't think anyone would be excited about it.
Yeah, I'd be whelmed.
Yeah, it'd be a very whelming, solid pick.
And then when he's making plays, you're probably it's the running, it's the tackling, and it's the turf toe. I don't love turf toe for defensive backs. That worries me a bit. Mm-hmm. It's those kind of three things that it's just, I think you can do better. Like, you're not upset about it, but you could do better.
You could do better. And my thing was, at 16, a guy that I have probably very close to the blue chip style of player in terms of just watching him play football on tape, he's close. My knock on him for not putting him there is the clear athleticism, and I just can't get this nagging feeling out of my brain that he would probably be a mid 4.5s, maybe even a low 4.6 athlete if he were to actually run. And I think he knows that, and I think his agent knows that, and I think that's why it's not happening. Because if he were to do that and run, he would probably fall into the 20 area. And they don't want that, because every draft slot you fall is another, is hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions over the course of your first contract.
All right, next. We picked the same person at round 2, pick 39. Actually, I think this is the only one we had the same in this mock. We both took Landon Jackson, edge, out of Arkansas. What are your thoughts on Landon?
This was purely a height, weight, speed, freak athlete pick at edge. Landon Jackson's tape leaves a lot to be desired. He has an 11.2% pressure rate on all his snaps. He does not get home. It's the bet that Dennis Allen being a really good defensive coach and him being surrounded by Montez Sweat and Deo, that he wouldn't have to play a lot and you could just let him pin his ears back in passing situations and say, hey, use this special ability to run fast and convert speed to power and go kill quarterbacks. That's your only job. Don't think about anything else.
It's funny because we do this separately, right? We do our mocks. I throw them together. The notes I have, so I passed on Nick Scourton. I put that in there because I want to highlight, because I think he is in Landon Jackson fits Dennis Allen a bit better. I wrote down I think he's going to work well with the Bears' current setup. You can have Dio start now as Landon finds his footing, and then have Dio kick in on rushing downs and let Landon pin his ears back. Like literally word for word what I wrote about him.
I was so excited after the combine to go watch Landon's tape, and I just remember, because I watch on a tablet at work, or when I'm watching my kid, as just like watch film and do my cut-ups and like take my notes. And I just remember after one game putting it down and just doing one of these, like, why is a guy who can physically do the things you can do not good at football?
So Landon, he had a 9.88 RAS, ranked 23 out of 1,802 for defensive ends from 1987 to 2025. He had a 4.69 40. 10-year split was a bit slower, but his vertical was 40.5 and a broad jump of 10 foot 9 inches. He led the Razorbacks with 6.5 sacks and was tied, and then 9.5 tackles for loss. I mean, he's got all the energy in the world. But like you said, so like all the physical stuff is there. But like you said, when you watch him move, it just looks painful sometimes. Like it's just weird and out of control. It's just odd. It's odd moving.
You know what it looks like? It looks like he had a growth spurt late in his life, like late in high school, and he hasn't quite figured out his body yet.
Well, and that's actually true when you think about it. Remember like the viral clip of him like a couple years ago when he's in that one camp and he's just this weird lanky kid who can't arm rip, and then I think he put on like 40 pounds or something like that. So I just don't know that he knows how to use that 40 pounds yet.
Yeah. Let me put it this way. Do I think if he fulfills his true athletic potential, you're talking about a thing where you're like, this dude's a something. Do I think he's going to fulfill it? No, probably not. And Landon, if you're listening, I'm sorry. Like, I want you to be great, but I just, how many the benchmark for pressure rate in terms of pressure percentage is like for good pass rushers is 20%. That's like the number you're looking for guys to become good. He's half of that at like 11.2. That's a bad number. That's a scary number. Like,
and if he is going to reach his potential, fortunately, the Bears have the setup that he might be able to. Like you said, he doesn't have to start right away. He doesn't have to produce immediately.
You're not depending on him for anything.
Right. Yeah. Dennis Allen, hopefully, is going to be able to scheme and work his magic and use his length, use his explosion in a way that makes sense. Your corners are going to be able to lock down
stunts and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like you can make his life easy, not just say, "Hey, put your hand in the dirt, kiddo, go get him." Like you can make his life easier. It was purely I think he fits the prototype for Dennis Allen, and he's a freak of nature athletically. Why not?
Yeah. Okay. Like I said, I was sitting there with him and Nick Scourton, both available. I was like, I don't really love Scourton, to be honest, but also he fits Dennis Allen better. And I feel the Bears need a higher investment in edge than they've done recently.
I like Scourton a lot better. He's better at football, and he's got a 22% pressure rate. He does things better at football. It's just not as aesthetically pleasing looking on the RAS.
Yeah, that's true. All right, Danny's back up again. Round 2, pick 41. Actually, someone I took in the last mock, I love this guy. Alfred Collins, Texas, defensive interior.
I love Alfred Collins. I think he's very safe. Sounds like such a bad word to describe players because it's like, oh, well, he's limited. No, I think Collins is just, you know what to expect from him. I think he's going to be a run stuff, 2 gapping, just pain in the ass who can push the center of the pocket. There's nothing wrong with that. And he's awesome to watch. And if anything, if we've learned anything over the past couple seasons in draft year, take the Texas defensive linemen. They're probably
That's
pretty
a good rule
good
of
at
thumb.
football. Take the Texas defensive linemen because they're good at football.
And I talked about this last mock when I took him. And if you want my full thoughts, go and listen. I'm not going to do a whole thing on him. Like, he was behind Tavondre Sweat and some of these other really good
Byron Murphy is an ass kicker.
And so it's like, well, yeah, he's not going to make a big impact like last year, previously, because he's behind these other guys. And I think he still has a lot of potential too. He's still young. He still is trying to figure out how to harness and add moves to his repertoire.
No, I'm saying, but at the baseline, I know what I think.
But his baseline is, what you're going to get. I think he's going to come in and you're going to get solid play right away.
Like, and could you imagine, like, Billings is obviously your starter right now next to
Dexter /
Jarrett.
Okay.
Is, I think, going to start. Jarrett's
they're going to split. They're going to rotate. It's fine.
But could you imagine the rotation of you get your time off from this little fire hydrantly strong man in Billings to just this catastrophe to this catastrophe coming at you who's just built like a brick shithouse.
Aaron Banks is shitting himself over in Green Bay.
Yeah. Just an unneeded shot. What is this?
Again, I'm just like, I have about 2-ish weeks of just Twitter fights that I'm like now just putting out in the podcast. Like, I got to do a whole thing with this dude about
just strays for everybody.
Exactly. But I love that pick. I traded. So I was sitting there. I wanted to recoup some value, right? Poles traded away some picks recently, right? To get, which I like the moves, to get Jonah Jackson, to get Joe Thuney. I just think getting a little more value is good. I saw some players further down that I was happy with, so I moved back 2 spots for a third round pick. That value is probably too high. Let's be real. However, I did my rule's 50%. That just is what it is. With that pick, since I just moved back 2 spots with my trade with the 49ers, my man, round 2, pick 43, I took Quinshon Judkins. I know if you look at some of his advanced stats, you may not love it because he does leave some meat on the bone in terms of average yards and like some of the efficiency numbers. But honestly, he's like my 3rd ranked running back. He might be my favorite running back. Running back 3. Just like how he runs.
He's my favorite one to watch. He reminds me so much of Darius Geis stylistically coming out of LSU. Not the off-field stuff. Don't put me into Darius.
Not the off-field stuff and not the broken part.
Not the broken part, but the way he plays football is the way that I grew up watching running backs.
Yes.
That's how you're supposed to play running back. Take the fight to them. And to his counterpart in that same backfield's credit, Travion takes the fight to people. He's just little. And it's not going to make for a great career when you're 20 pounds less than Judkins and trying to do those things.
So Quinshon, he runs with anger and aggression. He's 6 foot, 221 pounds. He had a 9.88 RAS, which ranks 23 out of 1,909 running backs since 1987. He led the team, Ohio State, with 1,060 rushing yards, 14 rushing touchdowns. I mean, he's a touchdown monster. He's rushing score every 16.4 carries over 3 seasons. If you're someone like me or even you to some capacity, I know I probably watch a little more film than you do in terms of the draft process. It's just my hobby kind of thing.
Yeah. Go watch his college football playoff tape. Like his regular season is good.
Yeah.
The playoff is like a dude who is like putting the cape on, like, all right, it's time to go run people over and make life extremely difficult.
And I really like to, so you can take this good or bad. So he doesn't show a lot of wiggle, but he also just kind of opts for collisions. He just says, I'm going to run through you, not over you.
I'm going to make your life hard.
Yeah. And he does really well between the tackle, short yardage, can do a heavy snap count. He can really pick up blitzes. I like that. The negatives, if you want to go that route, he can run outside, but sometimes his angles allow pursuit to catch him. And I already talked about his yards per carry. I mean, Henderson's had him beat so badly in this. But I think if you pair Judkins with a DeAndre Swift, more of that slasher, that's your Knuckle Sonic if you want to go with the Lions running back comparison. Like that's one of the reasons why I like him here too, is because he's the kind of running back you don't have. What literally DeAndre Swift never did last year was just run through and over people. Just get me my 4 yards, get me my 3 yards.
In a way, he's kind of idealized Roshan.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. If Roshan had more juice and not less concussions.
And no scrambled egg brains.
Oh, it's such a shame, man. It sucks. My comp for Quinshon is Joe Mixon.
I could see that. I just remember watching Geis on the Bayou and just being like, this dude's a menace. And he turns out in the worst ways possible too.
In all of the meaning of the word. Danny's back up, round 2, pick 47, taking Donovan Jackson, Ohio State tackle, who just limps through the combine and refused to stop.
Yes. Tough guy. Positional versatility, has played both sides, guard and tackle. I think he's a player that they could love just because he does offer ability interior and out on the edge.
He might have actually played better at tackle, to be honest, too, which is crazy.
He might have been. I have him graded as a guard, but if they chose to make him the replacement to Braxton Jones, I wouldn't complain about it.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a stupid complaint to have. But I really like Donovan Jackson. I know the idea that people want them to take Simmons at 10 is floating around out there. His injury worries me a lot. That's not a good injury. Like, I don't know, typically you see that in older athletes, not guys that are 21 or whatever, but you would know better than most, Mason, that recovery from that specific injury that he suffered is not great. And
no, it's trash.
And people are like, well, he was moving, he was walking around good, he's got no limp. Those were like some of the cryptic tweets you were seeing.
I don't care.
Guys, like I always go back to the Derrick Rose comparison. Derrick Rose walked off the court under his own power with a fully ruptured ACL.
Yeah.
Like these guys are such big, strong, tough people that some of it doesn't matter.
So personal story, I tore my ACL my junior year of college playing lacrosse. Went for a ground ball, pops, whatever. I didn't know I tore it. I played on it for 2 straight weeks because I didn't realize that it was torn because it just buckled every once in a while. Because as the doc told me at the time, your quad was strong enough that it was able to compensate for it. Like
it was the Boone Miles thing, yeah.
It just happened. Like people 6 weeks post-op ACL, another example, are usually walking pretty fine. I'm not throwing them on a football field anytime soon.
Yeah, his was a full rupture with reported nerve damage, right? Like,
yep.
Like that's not good. That's really, when you start getting into the nerve damage thing, like I don't think people understand. Like I believe that if my schooling from Southern like lives in my brain still, I believe nerves recover at like 1/10 of the rate of any part of your other body. So if something takes 10 days to heal on you, a nerve takes 100 days to fully heal because of just how fragile those things are on your body and how meaningfully hard they are to repair and heal.
Nerves grow about 1 millimeter per day or 1 inch per month.
Such little recovery.
Anywho, Donovan Jackson. Anything else on him?
No, not really. I just like the idea of him, especially as like an insurance policy for anywhere really on the line because he's played left, right, in and out.
Yeah, I love that pick. Someone that I didn't take him last time. He's someone that probably at some point I'll take because, again, like you said, the versatility is there, the mentality. I joked about the whole combine thing, but as probably stupid as it was for him to keep pushing, that's also the kind of player mentally that you want on your team. So I think Donovan Jackson's going to be a great pro. All right, round 3, pick 72. Got to keep it in the family with a Mason. Mason Taylor, tight end out of LSU.
Hate it. Want nothing to do with it. Sorry.
You hush over there. So I get why you might say that. I really do. He right now though, it's kind of crazy. He's projecting as a late first, early second round pick, and but he was available here in round 3, so I took him. Son of Jason Taylor, Hall of Famer, and uncle Zach Thomas, also Hall of Famer. Story goes, during COVID, he asked his parents if they could build a gym in their garage so he can keep lifting, and it became the go-to for his teammates to work out in there, just kind of the whole leadership thing. 2024, he set the single season record for a tight end with 55 receptions, and the only tight end in school history with 100-plus receptions with 1,000-plus receiving yards. He can play both inline and in the slot, showing his versatility, but definitely inline's a bit of a problem at times for him. He's effective at gaining extra yards after catching the ball, moves really well out of routes, capable of running an expanded route tree, and has a pretty good understanding of the game in space. However, his run blocking just sucks, and his play strength is not very good. He's a one-speed route runner, doesn't really have the attention to detail, and he makes it a bit too easy to read and jump his route breaks. His game needs a lot of polish, but he has the ability to become a higher volume target for a team looking to upgrade. If you're going like pie in the sky, Dallas Goedert-y, if you're going not that, I mean, I didn't come up with a bad comp, to be honest. I just came up with a fun one. But I could see why someone wouldn't be as high on him just because, again, he's rough. He's got some rough tape in terms of some of the route running and the play strength.
I'm not sure if it's just play strength. I'm hesitant to ever call a professional athlete of any sport, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, whatever it might be, soft. But in a way, he plays a little, I'll call it contact adverse. He doesn't want to be touched or hit sometimes. He just wants nothing to do with it. And that was the first thing I noticed, really, because I always look for the things I dislike first when I watch tape. And then I go to the things like, what does he do well? And how does the counterbalance go? The first thing I was like, what do I not like about him? He does not want to be hit or engage in contact or block or have anything to do with it, like at all. Like, that's just something I want nothing to do with on my football team. It's the same reason why I didn't like the linebacker coming out of Clemson who was drafted by the Ravens a couple years back. Because playing tight end, linebacker, safety positions of that nature and being the politically correct way of saying soft contact adverse is not a good way to go through life in this league.
Let's see here. All right. Danny's up next. Round 3, pick 72, Devin Neal, running back out of Kansas.
Okay. So full disclosure.
Full disclosure. I
turned on his tape expecting to hate him. I'm a very harsh critic of running backs. Running backs and linebackers are the thing that I probably armchair evaluate best. I've had a good track record. I know what I like. I know what I don't like. And I fully expected to just not like him based on what everyone was telling me. Like, people are like, I know your style. I know what you don't like. You're not going to like him. And I actually, and maybe it's me just being me, and I actually ended up liking him more than I thought. In some capacity, he actually reminded me of David Montgomery. He's got good stop start. He's got some stuff going on where it's like, I can see a world in which he works in the NFL. I know some people, namely Nate Tice, called him like akin to Devin Singletary. Well, what was the big thing for Singletary coming out? That him and Montgomery were like the same player, just Montgomery had all the fanfare. Like, that was the big, talking point. But I ended up really liking Neal and thinking, he would also be your smash to someone's dash, or, the knuckles to DeAndre Swift Sonic, something like that. I hate the comparison because it's such low-hanging fruit, but I liked how he sets his blocks up. He runs with his pad level well. He really does have this ability to take what's given to him. He doesn't just barrel himself into a pile and hope for the best. The old Trent Richardson MO, like, I'm just going to run into the line. Like, all right, fam, do what you do. One of the things I liked most about him is watching him that seldom, if ever, did the first guy get him down clean. He always is churning and moving forward. Like, it's not Quinshawn. He's not taking the fight to somebody. just like Montgomery seldom, if ever, really takes the fight to somebody. But you'll be damned if you're getting him down by yourself, because he's just slippery. He's got dexterity and all this stuff where it's like, I don't know why you're so hard to bring down, but you consistently are falling forward and making it hard to be brought down on your own. It was the same thing. Like, I get Tice's comp of Devin Neal even, or Devin Singletary even, where it's like, yeah, if you go watch his Florida Atlantic tape, same kind of idea.
Yeah.
Just impossible to bring down one-on-one, a less than stellar athlete, good, not great, more explosive with the jumps versus the long speed. Like, it plays. I just saw, like, my initial thought was, this guy is some version of Montgomery. And then I heard Football 301, and I heard that comp up from Tice, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense too. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, he just projects as a guy who's going to be a very solid running back for you, who's going to, like you said, do your short yardage. He's got good contact balance, good patience and decisiveness. He's going to fall forward, right? But he just, like you said, like Montgomery did, he doesn't have the top end speed. So when he does break out, you're gonna get caught, and
someone's gonna catch him. Yeah,
it is what it is. Capable receiver, but they're not. It's hard. He's going to catch it and then go down. There's not going to be a lot of make you miss after the catch. And the thing that really got me with him, though, is I don't love his pass protection. That needs to be buttoned up. Like
that, I don't think they asked him to do it. Truth be told, based on what I watched, I think that he was in there for one purpose.
The 2 games I watched, and it was just like, I don't know that you know how to do this. It just looks very confused. He looks confused.
Yeah, agreed. No, I don't think that they asked him to do it. Truth be told,
that's a good program. Don't have your running back block ever. All right. I traded again. It was honestly, I just felt the Bears needed more swings in this draft and some future equity, like I talked about earlier. And the person I actually wanted was a little bit further down. I felt like I could get him, so it just wasn't a rush for me to take him at this pick. So I traded away round 3 pick 99, and I ended up getting the 4th pick 116. Fourth round pick at 116, a 5th rounder, and then a future 5th rounder. So just kind of stacking here. All right, quick break, and then we're gonna move on. All right, we're back, and I traded back far enough that Danny's up. Round 4, pick 113. Gunnar Helm, tight end.
Tight end. Yep. So, full disclosure, when I saw this, Helm was not someone I expected to be there at that pick. Because I've only done a handful of these to this point, like messing around in my spare time. This was like the first one I actually finished to completion. I normally get to about round 5 and I tap out, or 4 and I tap out, just because like I got something better to do. I don't have the time for this right now. Very, very meh athlete testing wise. He is very much just, and I don't even think he's a good blocker. I think he's very much just be a big wide receiver. He reminded me like, I don't think he was as good as the guy I'm about to bring up at Iowa State, but shades of Charlie Kohler, where just like be a receiver, be a big body, be reliable, catch the ball, don't mess this up. Like oversized slot, some people call it, bully slot, some people call it, whatever you want to be your special term. But he makes himself a big target for the quarterback. He's got reliable hands. He really solid route runner. Actually, he's very fluid in what he does. Gets himself free, gets himself open, and finds the quarterback with his eyes, which I think is an underrated aspect of being a pass catching weapon. Of hey, find the quarterback and be like, hey, dude, hi, I'm right here, open, buddy. But I don't think he's anything special. You take a tight end in the fifth round, it's like I think he's for 5th round tight end at least, given his athleticism or lack thereof, and everything like that. Like he's just, I think he's a safe, reliable, like pass catching tight end that could pair well with Komet, who would be more of your inline guy.
Do you know he's from Englewood, Colorado? I don't know. Like you said, like not a great athlete. I saw shades of Jake Ferguson when I was watching him. That was my comp for him. But so good hands, and he ran a decent route tree. One of the biggest things that was weird, it was just like it just seemed like no one cared about him, like defensively, because like I think there were so many other targets around him. Like it wasn't like he was heavily challenged at the line or drew like a really tough matchup. He just kind of was open a lot. So it's like I don't really know how to take this because they're not really guarding you.
No, I mean, credit to him. He moves when he gets the ball. He is open. He makes like I said, soft hands. He makes himself a big target.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to not be enormous when you are enormous. But he was the best player there. I needed a tight end, and I was like, all right, I'm not really thrilled about this, but it could be worse.
He could do worse in the 4th round.
Yeah.
All right, I am up now in the 4th round. Pick 116 after my trade back. I took Willie Lampkin, North Carolina guard, and I put this with a question mark. Here's the thing. Willie, he's 5'10", 270 pounds. The joke going around the Senior Bowl at the time with the measurements was, right, he, again, 5'10", he had an inch larger wingspan than both Will Campbell, who's 6'6", and Grace Abel, who's 6'5". So apparently he's just the anti-T-Rex, just longest arms ever. But here's the other thing. I love his tape. Like, I also love that he won the Florida 2A Heavyweight State Championship in wrestling as a senior with a 47-0 record. Love my wrestlers. 61 career starts across the interior, 26 at left guard, 21 at right guard, and 14 at center. He plays with insane leverage, like leverage monster. And he's very good athletic ability to close space on climbs and pulls. Love his footwork and use of hands. Stays in contact during run blocking. And he had a great showing in Mobile at guard and center. He dominated his one-on-one matchups against some pretty top-level defensive tackle prospects. But like I said, he's 5'10". He's 2 inches taller than me. He's tiny. He can get stacked and pulled into overextension here and there if unable to establish first meaningful contact. His lineman tape is solid, but I wonder if it's unlikely that he's going to get a real chance to play interior blocker at the NFL level. He can play, but I wonder if he's likely going to end up being kind of like a fullback tight end blocker extension of the line than a true, like, we're going to put you at the line. Kind of so we see like Pat Ricard with more juice in terms of his athletic profile. I took him here because, again, I absolutely love his tape. He's a fantastic blocker. And I wonder if he could be a break in case of emergency developmental center / like I said, your full back tight end. We just need a big blocker on the edge. Like we've seen Ben Johnson do, where he takes an extra tackle and throws someone out there. He takes an extra guard and throws someone out there. Now you have a guy that can just kind of do that.
I mean, it's not a bad idea. And I like the note of he plays with great leverage. Yeah, he kind of does by virtue of the fact that he's 5'10".
Look, he built different, just tiny different.
Tiny different with really long tree vine arms.
I don't understand it. Like seriously, like if you haven't watched this tape, go watch it. It's just so fun. All right, I got another pick because of my trade. Round 5, pick 149, Pat Bryant, wide receiver, Illinois. 6'2", 204 pounds. He's available here because of, honestly, a lack of top-level potential. He's not fast. He ran a 4.6 140. He started 3 years at Illinois and kept ascending in terms of his production. Last year, second team All Big Ten, led the team with 984 receiving yards, 18.2 yards per reception, and a school record-tying 10 receiving touchdowns. Now, that's not that crazy because it's the University of Illinois. He's good size, but he's not very sudden, and he doesn't have great vertical speed. His game is really about his release, which is very cerebral, physicality, and ball skills. Competitive and urgent in fighting for contested catches and good body control. But he's not going to light the world on fire for you, like I said. But I like the idea of a bigger body here at that 6'2", 204, compared to like Zacchaeus, right? Smaller guy. So at some point, you got to get some big bodies in the room and some blockers. Like Zacchaeus he blocks his butt off, but that's more of an effort thing than a size thing. I think they need a guy who's going to run a dig across the middle, a guy who's going to dig out a corner and block for you. And I think Pat Bryant could be that. So that's why I took him here.
I'm with it. I think actually Ben Johnson would love him because he is just gritty and grindy, and he tries very hard.
Yeah.
He tries very, very hard.
Tries very, very hard to produce very average. Oh man, I'm up again. All right, round 5, pick 152. I took Simeon Barrow Jr., defensive interior out of Miami, because I love Miami players. I just do. 6'3", 290 pounds, really solid against the run using his natural leverage. Again, another natural leverage guy. That's just my draft, apparently. And hand technique to beat blocks. Love his pad level and to maintain that aforementioned leverage. Always pursuing plays from the backside. Displays pretty advanced feel for zone blocking schemes, being able to stay square to the line while able to work laterally without having to sacrifice his responsibility for his gap. Unique special team impact. He actually has an uncanny ability to block field goals, which is just kind of fun. Just kind of weird. But con, he's not a pass rusher. And when his initial move gets stalled, finesse moves don't generate pressure when forced to work through contact. Struggles to convert at times his initial quickness into power rush moves. And again, size limitations at 290, which raise questions about his ability to hold up against some more massive NFL offensive linemen. But the Bears had a problem stopping the run last year. And with some of these end of the draft picks, I'm saying we are plugging holes because Billings, let's be real. I mean, like, he's got an expiration on him at some point, and we saw how bad that the Bears rush defense was when they lost Billings.
Got so bad, so fast.
Danny, back up, round 5, pick 153. Taking Isaac Tesla. I haven't watched him.
I think so. So I only threw on a game of his, and game and a half from what I could find.
Wide receiver.
From Arkansas, another Arkansas kid, in this draft, and he is being picked strictly off the idea of him because I only turned him on again because I was watching the combine and my man blew it up. He had an RAS here as we pull this up that ranked 30th rather of 3,445 wide receivers from 87 on. He weighed in at 6'3.5", 214 pounds with 70 bench press reps of 225. He verticaled 39.5 inches. He broad jumped 10'9". His 40-yard dash was a 4.43, with what brought his score down under a perfect 10 to a 9.92. Were the fact that his 10 and 20-yard splits were a little less than great. 1.57 10-yard split, 2.81 20-yard split. And then his change of direction, actually, normally when you get these big, long, tall wide receivers who are fast vertically, their change of direction, shout out to DK Metcalf, is garbage. Yeah. He actually shuttled 4.05 and 3 become 6.85. So he's moving at that size, both in a short area and vertically. Now, if based on that, obviously it takes him a little bit to get to top speed, but not a ton of time at all, being in the 7s versus like 5s and 6s that the RAS scale is on. But here's what I'll say. This is a big slot who also has vertical capabilities. Typically you have one or the other in a body type. Like you get the bully slot or just the vertical slot. So you get either like Christian Kirk, who's just sprinting downfield on the seam in the slot, or you're getting like Cooper Kupp, who's just physical, big, and not running very fast. That being said, he's got mixtures of both, but nothing is really substantiated on tape from what I've seen. It's all like based on the idea of him. Like he's big and he's hard to match up with because of where he lines up at that size and strength. He shows signs of blocking because of how big and strong he is.
Signs of blocking. I love that.
But he's not really doing it with any consistency or regularity. He can high point the ball at 6'3.5", almost 6'4". Like he does things well, and I want to like if he had any sort of even above average production and that testing ability, you'd be seeing him mocked round 2, even back into round 1 of this draft. He's just It's all like based on the hypothetical version of him. It was like when the Bulls drafted Patrick Williams at 4 overall. Like,
Gross.
yeah, he didn't play a lot, but do you see the things he can do physically? It's kind of amazing. It's kind of fun. It's kind of awesome. But the big knock on him is just like it's really lack of reps and tape. It was very subpar, if not bad, production. He just doesn't like everything negative. Just it literally looks like the fact that he just doesn't play enough football. Like,
plus, he's got sweet flow, like that hair, majestic.
Oh yeah, that was the other part. When I heard his name announced, I had looked up and I heard the name and I was like, "That's a white dude."
Like, what the heck?
But he does. He has fantastic flow. And in the 5th round, for me, like I think the draft loses a ton of value after round 5. But in the 5th round is when you can just start taking your guys who have no ball production or no football production at all, and just start drafting ridiculous athletes and just hoping for the best. And that was my whole idea behind Tesla.
I'm all about it. All right. I'm continuing my vendetta of bolstering this defensive interior. Round 7, pick 235. Cameron Jackson. He goes by Cam. Pretty sweet. Cameron. Straight out of a Key and Peele skit here. Look, at the end of the day, right now the Bears, if you could go behind Dexter, go behind Grady Jarrett, you have Andrew Billings, depending on how you want to tackle this, but then you have Chris Williams, you have Zach Pickens, who he has not been realized in any way, whether it's on the field or can't stay healthy.
He sucked.
Yeah.
There's no way around it.
Yes. I was being slightly more diplomatic, but you're right. He did suck. Jonathan Ford is also technically on this roster. There's just not a lot there. So double dipping here at the defensive interior late in the draft, I am fine with. When it comes to Cam Jackson, you're not taking this guy based on his RAS. He had a 4.56, 5.17 40, and his 10-yard split was poo at 1.81. He ranked 1,000 out of 1,800 defensive tackles since 1987. But he is 6'6", 328 pounds, mammoth frame with rare length and anchorability. He carries that weight remarkably well and uses his frame to eat space. You're taking him as a run stopper. Like in 2024, played 12 games. He had 37 tackles, 4 tackles for loss. It's just kind of fine. He's pretty much a non-factor as a rusher. I mean, he's available in the 7th round because a team is going to need to want a guy who's basically a 2-down player that needs polish. But he's long, plays with extremely heavy hands, has some nasty stacking, shedding ability, and violently disengages, keeps blockers out of his frame with good arm extension, and if he times his bull rush well, he can walk the center back. But he's inconsistent with his base width, which allows offensive linemen to uproot him. Poor first step quickness and is pretty kind of sluggish at short spaces, and conditioning is a concern for him. He's visibly gassed on longer drives. Hence why, again, he's more of a early down guy, and you're not going to. He had 1.5 sacks in 2024. That's not why you're getting him. But
that's Shamar production.
God, I don't want anything to do with Shamar Stewart. It's wild. But again, I'm plugging holes. I want someone behind Billings that's going to eat space. So between Simeon, who I took in round 5, and Cameron, who I took in round 7, one of those two guys I'm hoping is going to be able to do that job. Danny, round 7, pick 235, Shmael Mondon Jr., linebacker out of Georgia.
So first things first, he's so tiny for a linebacker. He's so little. He's like 5'11", 227 pounds. That's a big safety, is what that is. But in this frame of the draft, listen to what I said earlier. Athletes. Shmael Mondon had a 8.7 RAS, a 4.62 40 at 6'2", 224 pounds. In round 6, I'm not looking for you to play defensive snaps. What am I looking for you to do? Run in a straight line and kill the kick returner. Just blow them up. Typically, your kick returners are tight ends, safeties, linebackers, running backs, etc. This is what this is. This is a pick of a guy who can run in a straight line and go find the football. He is here for a reason. He's an undersized linebacker. He's
He also
actually
had a
been
stress fracture in his foot in the spring.
yes, he's been fairly productive, and he has a ton of playing experience. He's small. The stress fracture. The big thing I noticed when I watched him, because I think I've gotten through a dozen linebackers at this point in my process, he's just all over the place. For a guy who plays as much as he's played, you would expect him to have a better feel for the game. And he just doesn't seem to – he lacks feel or instinct or football IQ, whatever you want to call it. He's like – you know how we used to say Jay Cutler was see it, throw it?
Yeah.
Like there was no anticipation. He's like see it, hit it. Like it's the exact opposite of like when you watch Jihad Campbell, who infuriates me. It's like Jihad's just guessing and going the wrong way. He's not even like see it, get it. He's just I'm going the wrong way. Bye. Like he's like the run is 3 yards up the alley already, and he's now realizing, oh, I gotta go get that guy. Like he should have a long career given his abilities and inabilities as a special teamer if things work out. But that's exactly what I'm picking him to just go make tackles on special teams.
Yeah. At some point, too, I mean, considering the Bears did not retain the rights to Jack Sanborn, right? You do need who is your will backup, slide in if someone gets hurt or whatever, linebacker. Like you need someone there. I'm not saying that for Schmale. This is just a whole other thing. You need at some point you got to figure out someone to slide into that role because currently the Bears depth chart doesn't have someone I trust in that role.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand. And I may have said this on the show a couple weeks ago. Linebacker play across the NFL sucks.
Oh, it's doo-doo.
It's awful. And I get why it happened. We've come to a point where guys like Mondin have become just in vogue. Get the smaller, undersized guy who's essentially a safety so you can cover all these wide receivers and all the passing concepts. But they're just not good linebackers anymore. Like, and I get why it happened. But watching some of the like tackling ability and ability to just stack and like, do you remember stack and shed, like those drills in high school? Like stand this guy up, get off him, and get to the back. Those guys don't really exist anymore. Like this ability to just get off a block clean and go get the running back or go get the tight end in space.
Well, like your best linebackers, right? They're either going to bulk up and go to try to play edge, or they're going to slim down and go try to play safety. Like linebacker is just not a fulfilling position anymore.
It offends me.
All right, we're getting close to the end here. I took round 7, pick 242, Jordan Hancock, safety out of Ohio State. I'm going to keep this simple. The Bears need safety depth for special teams, just like Danny said when it came to linebacker too. I considered taking one earlier because between Byer's age and Brisker's health, at some point you're going to need a starter. It might be next year, might be this year. It just kind of depends how things pan out. I like him though, in particular, because he's kind of pretty versatile. He's good size, but average coverage ability. Experience playing back down from the slot. Like he can go in the nickel. He can, go deep. He can play it free. He can play strong. He just does it all very okay. None of it is awesome by any means. His size creates catch disruptions when he's in the right position. I believe he's 6'2", I think is what I had written down. Either 6 foot or 6'2". He's above average tackler and run support in space and has average thump. Effective blitzer from the slot using his burst to penetrate gaps. But he does lose sight of the play often in zone and lacks route anticipation and twitch to break up plays. So, look, again, we're in round 7 here. You need a body for special teams and just someone who might be able to slide in. Obviously there's a couple of safeties. Elijah Hicks did decent, was coming in when he needed to. But at the end of the day, do you really want some of these other guys to play extended snaps, or again, maybe even going into next year when you maybe you move on from a Bayard, or if Brisker can't stay healthy for you, you need some potential backup options. There are some really fun safeties in this draft. The problem is the Bears just aren't going to be in a spot to take them because there's just other stuff you need.
Yeah. Agreed.
Danny, your final pick. Round 7, pick 242, Marcus Ware, Montana State guard.
Yep. So very productive player. I believe he was 3-time All-Conference for Montana State. I believe he was actually a tackle as well, but another undersized guy playing in the subdivision, 6'3", 298. Probably idealized for a zone rushing offense, which for anyone who's paid any sort of attention, yes, the Lions are very multiple in what they do, but as of this most recent season, they ran more outside zone run than any other team in the NFL. That's how they blocked. That's what Ben Johnson was running. He's strong in the upper body, at least. He kind of lacks some weight in the ass at being sub 300 pounds, but he's been productive, and that's when you're taking these subdivision players. I don't want to bank on just traits. I want to bank on guys who have been good, if not dominant, at the subdivision level. So it's clear to me. I kind of just went like, what would Poles do at this pick? And I saw the guard, and I saw where he was from, and we all know Ryan Poles has some like hipster offensive line tendencies to him. That I knew about this guy before you knew about this guy. So that's kind of what I went with, and a guy who has accolades and production at a subdivision level, despite being undersized. So instead of playing tackle like he did for Montana State, he'll probably kick into guard, and you can maybe develop him into something with Rauscher being or Rushar, however you say it, being your offensive line coach, and maybe you get something out of him as a 7th-round pick, even if it's just him being a primary backup for years.
I assume this is when the kicker pick would happen.
Yeah, I'm good. I'll sign a UDFA. Find the UDFA kicker who kicks bombs, and just see what happens.
You mean? Oh, is this tonight? You don't want Tyler Loop out of Arizona, the current number 1 ranked kicker, or Ryan Fitzgerald out of Florida State, number 2. I just googled that. I have no idea. Anywho, all right. That's our drafts. For those listening on the pod, I'm going to do a quick read through for them. Danny originally traded out of that 10th pick with the Cardinals to get the 16th pick plus other things. At the 16th pick, he took Will Johnson, cornerback out of Michigan, then Landon Collins, edge out of Arkansas, Alfred Collins, defensive interior, Texas, Donovan Jackson, tackle, Ohio State, Devin Neal, halfback out of Kansas, Gunnar Helm, tight end out of Texas, Isaac Tesla, wide receiver out of Arkansas, Shmael Mondon, linebacker out of Georgia, and then Marcus Ware, guard out of Montana State. I took Armin Membu, tackle / guard, depending on how you look at him, out of Missouri. Also took Landon Jackson, edge out of Arkansas. I traded back a bit. Took Quinshon Judkins, running back, Ohio State. Mason Taylor, who Danny loves, tight end out of LSU. Then I traded back a little bit more. Took Willie Lampkin, who might be my favorite, not amazing, but just favorite player in the draft, guard of North Carolina. Pat Bryant, wide receiver out of Illinois. Simeon Barrow, defensive line, Miami. Cameron Jackson, or goes by Cam, Florida, defensive line as well. And then Jordan Hancock, safety out of Ohio State. Danny, what are your overall thoughts on these drafts?
They're fine. We'll do it again in a couple weeks, and we'll try and see what's what. It's an act of just trying to.
What a salesman! It's great.
Yeah. No, but we said it last year, and we opened it with this thought exactly. We are doing these to try to bring to attention the Bears fans different prospects that could be on the radar. Are you going to like all of them? No, you should not like all of them. But you got to go do your own homework on them if you want to be involved in the draft process. But if you can't and don't have the time, like some of us don't, we will bring you the anecdotes, and you can make your own decisions based on that. We are doing our best to just bring you names and bring you some maybe comprehensive looks at these players.
Exactly. Danny nailed it. This is just information for you, right? Just take a look at these guys. Here's some players that we came across, we might like to varying degrees they might be options. They might be off the board entirely. It's also interesting when you talk to some of these scouts and some of these GMs, like how small the actual list of players they want to draft actually are once you get to that night. Because, we're doing this and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, and then we're going to do 5 or so 50 players that at a minimum we're going to talk about. I mean, their list is like right around there. Like that's one of the reasons why teams trade out. They're like, well, yeah, I could take someone that doesn't fit us, whether it's scheme, culture, this, that, and the other, or we're just going to trade out because we don't want to deal with this, and we're going to try to get picks next year and look at it.
It's also fun. It's also why when you see UDFA's hit, why a lot of the names and you loved were 5th round prospects or 4th round prospects, and your team doesn't sign them. There's a reason for that.
Yep. Yep. And then once they're signing the UDFAs, then you're taking swings, right? And so yeah, after what I'd say after round 4, so round 5 through 7. That's why none of these mocks or any of that is accurate, because the valuation and thought processes on these guys are all over the board.
Yeah. It's even why you get in the second round guys you see projected in the 5th round, and teams are like, nope, want them in round 2. That's what I want. Because while yes, there are benchmarks and things you look for in these players, so much of this is like I said, benchmarks and thresholds matter. But so much of it is like art. Like, what do you see that they don't see? It's so stupid to say it that way, but it's the truth.
I still say to this day that the Bears wanted to draft Juice Scruggs. And when the Texans took him way higher than most people had him expected to be taken, that the Bears said, oh, shoot, we got to figure out
They
something
panicked.
different. And then they had it. Yes. So, and that happens, right? Because Team A has Juice Scruggs as a 3rd round pick, and Team B had him as a 4th. They're like, yeah, we can get him in the 4th. I was like, nope, Team A loved him. Anyway, that is it. We are going to, like Danny said, in a couple of weeks, we'll be back with another mock. We have a couple of those, and it's going to lead up ultimately to the Thursday before the draft, our penultimate live draft, where we're going to be all doing it together. We're going to have a special guest for that episode. Kyra will be there. And last year, we ended up having the chat being able to vote on picks as well. We may or may not do that this year. It was really annoying to do. I need a producer. But anyway, that's all we got. Any final thoughts before we get out of here, Danny?
No, I think that's about it, buddy.
All right. Bear down, everybody.